Welcome back to the Create a Blog series. In this episode we'll be taking a look at cleaning up our current views as well as hooking up our database to our views. So let's get started by looking at what we currently have. We have an index page, and we also have a view page that accepts the slug. We are going to start off with cleaning up the navigation as well as the content here. So over in Sublime, if we take a look at public, assets, CSS, and our template, you can see we have the body here as well as we have a starter template. Now this currently isn't used, but we're going to use that now. So I'm going to change that to wrapper, remove the text, and I'm just going to fix my tabbing here. And the next thing I'm going to do is load up our master file. So master files are in view, layouts, and we have master. And what I want to do is wrap the container inside that wrapper. So I'm just going to create a new div, call it wrapper, and place our container inside that wrapper. Now with that done, you should be able to refresh your page and you'll see that our content is pushed down. Because we did it on a master page, it is the exact same for our view. The next thing we're going to do is tackle our navigation. So I'm going to load up our partial navigation in Sublime. And the first thing I'm going to do is just remove the about here. And I also want to remove the class of active. And this we'll handle later on in our series. Now the next thing here, you can see that we're just using slashes for our home and index page. What we really need to be using is a named route. So inside our routes file, you can see that we have two routes here. We have one as home, and we have one as view. So we want to use this home one. So let's switch back over to our navigation. What I'm going to do is change these slashes, and I'm just going to say URL route and just say home. So you can save this and you can refresh. And because we're using a name route, we'll see that Laravel now has the correct information, and we can use our home button as well as my first blog. The next thing we're going to do is tackle some of the database information. So in our post.php here, this is our model. We have a title, a content, is published, and publish at. So the first thing I want to do is just using PHP Artisan Tinker, I want to clear out any posts that we have put in. So just go ahead and run PHP Artisan and say Tinker. And what this does is it loads up our Laravel project and gives us access to all the files within our project. But for now, we're just going to be using the post file. So let's go ahead and truncate anything that is in there. So I'll say app post truncate. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a row on our post table here. And you can see we have a title and a content. Now I'm not supplying it is published and published at. Because if we switch to our migration here, what you'll see is we're giving our migration a default value for is published. And because we're not passing any time or date into publish at, Laravel will create a 0 value. So let's go ahead and hit enter. You can see that we have our first record here. Now that we have our first record in there, why not have another one? So let's go ahead and create a second post, assign it some content, and this time I'm going to tell it that it is published. So I'm going to set publish to true, and I'm going to give it a published at timestamp. Now that we have some records to play with, let's switch over to our controller, our home controller that is, and pull those records in. So I want to start off with a post variable, and I'm just going to, for now, just say app post, and I want to make sure where is published is true. And the next thing I want to do is have an order by. So I want to order by the published at by descending, and I'm going to tell Laravel to get those records. Now we could add it straight to our view, but let's do some simple debugging here. So we'll die and dump the posts, and if we refresh our page, we'll see that we have one item, and this item should be our second item from our database. It is, and we can see that it is published, and it has a published at date. So now that we know this works, let's switch back to our IDE, remove our dump and die, and let's pass this value into our view. So we want to pass it as an array, and the blade variable we're going to be using is posts, and we will just assign it the PHP variable of posts. Now that we have some data being passed into our view, let's switch back to our blog index page and let's do some simple error checking. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have some posts in our variable. If we don't have any posts, we want to just display an error, and this error will be just a general alert. This is something to tell the user that we don't have any posts. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and test it. So we have to use PHP Artisan Tinker, and we have to change the second post that we put in our database. So we can just do a post find with the ID of 2, and for now let's just change the is published to false, and we have to save this record here. So if we come back to Chrome and we check it out, we can see that now we have an error. So let's head back into Tinker and let's redo what we did, or I should say undo. So we're going to make it publish and it's saved. So if we refresh, we don't see anything because we haven't coded that yet. This next part is kind of boring, so I'm going to speed it up. But basically what I'm saying, for each of the posts, I'm going to create a variable called post. And I'm going to use that variable to output some of the properties such as title, and a published at, format it by full month, day, year, as well as some time. The next thing I need to do is output some content. And I'll be using a Laravel helper called strLimit, and this accepts content as well as a length. Now you'll notice that we don't have 60 characters, so if we change this to 5, we'll get the 3 dots. But for now, let's leave it as 60. And the next thing we want to do is create a button for read more. So right now, we'll just say read more, it's a bunch of dots. When we check it out, we have our button. Now, the one thing that we need is our view accepts a slug. We really haven't done that yet. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to exit out of Tinker, and we'll start writing our PHP Artisan make migration command to alter the post table and add a slug. And we're just going to fill in the boilerplate table here, so when we open it up, everything's kind of ready to go. The table we're going to be editing is posts. So if we check out our database migration, in the up function, we just want to add a string called slug. And because we're using MySQL, I'm going to put it after content. So I can say content afterwards, and table drop column, in case we have to migrate down, we just want to drop that slug column. So we save everything and we do a migrate. So we do a PHP Artisan migrate. You can see there's an error here, so let's head back to our migration here, and I have forgotten the word after, so let's just save that. Let's come back here, let's do migrate again, and everything's good to go. And now that we're back on track, let's switch over and just add the slug to our model, as well as let's use Tinker, and let's load up those 2 records. We'll start with the first one, and let's just assign it a slug here. So we'll just say the post slug equals first, and we'll save it. We'll do the second one as well, so we'll change that slug and save that record. So the next thing we want to do is we need to hook up this read more button to the view with the slug. So if you remember correctly, inside our routes file, we have a view, and then it accepts a slug variable. So let's change that to a named route. So URL route, we'll say view, and we want to pass in the post and the slug itself. So let's save that and let's give it a shot here. It's back on home. If we do read more, we can see that slug is second, and that is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So once again, speeding this up a little, let's load up the blog view, and what we're going to do is just take out the script, and later on we'll be passing a post, so let's give it a title as well as the content, and we can't forget the published at date with the format of the full month, day, year, as well as the time. So now that we have the HTML here, what we need to do is we need to change our function to, instead of selecting a slug, we want to select the actual post itself. Now I'm just going to import this so I don't have a giant use statement here. So when I say use app/post, this just means I can just say post now instead of having to refer to the full namespace. So in this case I could say post where I could say is published is true because we want to make sure of that. So we'll copy and paste that in, as well as the slug. It's going to be what we pass in here, and we want to get the first record that we find. And for some reason, if we cannot find the slug, let's just return a redirect, and we want to go back to home, and this should actually be route because we're using named routes here. And we want to pass in the post instead of the slug. So I think this is good to go. So let's go ahead and let's try it out here. And looking at this now, we want to make sure that our slug is actually passed to the Laravel function strslug. And let's import the redirect and give this a refresh. And looks like there's a problem with this read more button here. So let's switch back to our IDE and just kind of look at our code here, see what we did wrong. And yep, there it is. We want to make sure that we can't find the post. And there we go, my second post from the home page. So let's go ahead and let's just edit our first post. And let's make it published. And for now, let's give it a published at date, something later than our first one. And now that that's done, let's make sure we save it. And on our home page, we have our first post, which we can view, as well as our second post. So far, everything is looking pretty good. Now, if we take a look at our code, we can see that we have some very long Eloquent statements here. Where publish is true, passing in the slug, and what we can do is we can change these to use query scopes. So in our post model itself, I'll scroll down to the bottom, add a comment for query scope. And what we want to do is make a new function, and it has to start with the keyword of scope. And what should we name this here? Let's just name this get post. So we'll come back and we'll say get post, and it'll pass a query as well as the slug. So the first thing we want to make sure we do is our slug needs to be using the Laravel helper function. And now let's return the Eloquent object. So query where it's published is true, and where the slug is the slug that we're passing in. So with that written, we can come back here, and what this gets changed to is post get post, and now we have to pass in the slug, as well as we just have to say first so that we get that first record. So we can come back here, give it a refresh, and you can see that everything is still working. And we'll just do some cleanup here, remove this unwanted line, and that's it for this video. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.